Welcome back to CHGO Bears After Dark. We're back from London, and we're presented by ComEd. ComEd always keeping the lights on for us here at CHGO Bears After Dark, and we appreciate them. Make sure you hit up ComEd.com/clean for all your energy needs. Here we are. Corey, how are you? Did you miss me? Right out the gate.
Not that much. You was in France, bonbon. You and Jenny. It was lovey dovey. Then you was at the game having a fun time. And then you left me a certain message on Facebook Messenger the one night.
Yes, late night in London, and we started talking about golfing in Arizona. Yeah. Which, if you go to truefantravel.com, who took us out to London, and shout out to those guys, we're doing it up again, going to Arizona here in a couple weeks. And tickets are no longer available for the game, but you can still get some of the individual packages, including our golf outing we're going to be doing Saturday morning, the day before the Bears-Cardinals game, and then the tailgate Sunday before the game. So you can join us. Corey's going to be there. Me, Hogue, Carm, the whole gang. We're going to be there. Nick Moriano. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I know a ton of Bears fans are making the trip out there for that game, and let's hope it's, the Bears continuing this winning streak that they're on. Because, Corey, we haven't talked here in a couple weeks. Yeah. And a lot has changed since then, and it's been a lot of fun to watch the growth of this quarterback. And he really, broke out in a lot of ways in London with 4 touchdowns, almost 5 touchdowns, right? And at the end of the day, it's just about seeing that feel that he's having with some of these throws, specifically that back shoulder dime ball up the seam in the red zone to Keenan Allen.
Yeah, it's a thing of beauty, especially when you see the quarterback feel confident enough to do those back shoulder plays with his wide receivers. That means they're on the same page. Because early on, the first couple of weeks of the season, what we're saying, him and DJ Moore not on the same page. Him and Keenan Allen, him and Cole Kmet not on the same page. And it seems like they're all starting to get on the same page. And Shane Waldron, what we're seeing from him is him finally play calling for the strengths of this team. Yep. And being able to find a way to have Caleb get the weapons, the ball. And I think it all starts with Swift. They finally got the running game going, especially in between the tackles. They've gotten things going. And it opens up that play action pass. It opens up the passing game. It keeps the defense on their heels. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing him be creative now with some of his calls. And Caleb's having fun. I think he's very comfortable in the system right now. In the past couple of weeks, he's been very comfortable, with everything. So it's been something fun to watch. And I think we always knew that, but I think people were expecting him right off the gate just to be what we saw in the Jacksonville game. And it takes time. That's what I've been saying from the beginning. He's going to be a talented guy, but it takes some time to get on the same page. Limited offseason. They're trying to figure out things. But it's good to see, usually you see, like, even a guy like Patrick Mahomes, you look at him, he's not playing well right now. I don't care. You watch the game, he's not playing that well. They're finding ways to win the ball game and get it done, but he's not playing very well right now. I mean, you look at his rankings, they're undefeated though, right? They're finding ways to get it done. That's the mark of good coaches. But it's good to see Caleb play well, right? You feel good about the game. You feel good about the throws. And, 4 touchdowns, almost 5 in that game against the Jacksonville team that back was against the wall. They needed a win right there. They came off a big win the week before. You kind of thought, hey, they were gonna give their best stuff. What we saw, the first 2 drives weren't perfect at all, right? And then after that, we saw things get going. So,
it has been. And I think the thing is, like, where, I think some of us were thrown off our spot, including myself, was sitting here saying, hey, they have a pretty easy schedule to start the year. And it felt like just the way when you looked on paper, when we did the schedule release show, in what was that, June, May, and it comes out and you're looking at this thing and you're saying, wow, the Bears have an opportunity. You don't play the Green Bay Packers. If you're watching here on YouTube, we have the schedule pulled up. You're not playing the Packers until November 17th. That's your first divisional game. And we've now talked at length about the gauntlet that is to come for this team. But at the end of the day, they're still not there yet. You still have weeks 8, 9, and 10 coming up here winnable games on their schedule. And I think we all underestimated, just how tough of a start it would be, specifically with the Titans and Colts and the offense not really ready to get off the ground at that point. Now you look back at that Colts game, and you're like, man, if only they could have found a way to win that one, because they're really starting to, win games they should, but create a little bit of a snowball effect, create a little bit of momentum. Because let's not get it twisted. I don't think any Bears fan is going to try to pretend like they've beaten anybody yet. They haven't. But that's not to take away from what they're doing, because it's from an execution standpoint. That's what's been impressive and what's been encouraging about what's to come here for the second half of this season. So now you have this big game here coming up on Sunday against Washington. So big that the NFL flexed it from a noon slate to the 3:25 window to put them on national spotlight. You got Tony Romo and Jim Nance going to be calling the game. But now comes Jayden Daniels, who gets hurt against the Carolina Panthers and hurts his ribs, isn't able to finish the game. He got hurt in the first half and never returned. And so we don't know the severity of the injury. I don't think they're going to tell us all week. But their head coach, Dan Quinn, said, it's a week-to-week injury. They're going to monitor things as the week goes along. So we're all kind of guessing at this point to what the severity of the rib injury is. So I'll ask you this, Corey. Have you ever dealt with any kind of a rib injury, whether it's bruised ribs or broken ribs?
So I've never dealt with ribs. I've dealt with a sternum. I mean, I got chipped. Who was the guy that did Dancing with the Stars that used to play for the Giants? Rashad Jennings.
Okay.
Oh, he chipped me in preseason one time, dude. I thought I broke my sternum. He hit me so hard right in the plate right here. I was rushing somebody. I didn't see him come. Man, that hurt like hell. Never have had the ribs, but I hear it's kind of, especially for a quarterback, that kind of throwing motion could affect it. I think it's a common thing with the quarterback, getting hit in the ribs. But Jayden Daniels is somebody that too, like his stature, he's not a very big guy at all. And you kind of just wonder about the way he runs and the way he scrambles. Was that going to catch up with him? And that's kind of what you're seeing with that.
Well, that's my question, right? Because whether they're bruised or broken certainly is significant. The difference, when they're broken, I hear it's hard to breathe.
Oh yeah.
Bruised, it can be a problem. But as a quarterback, it really is going to have your limitations. I've heard of players wearing the vest, quarterbacks wearing the vest, the protective vest, if you have broken or even bruised ribs to protect you there. But half of Jayden Daniels' game, maybe not half, I don't know what the percentage is, but a big part of Jayden Daniels' game is running the ball. So now you have this injury that if he does choose to play will be a factor in his decision-making, Corey. And so that leads me to think like how much do you think they'll have to scale back, part of what makes him great so far here to start his young career?
Yeah, I think that could be an opportunity. I would imagine they're probably going to put some kind of rib jacket on him if he does play. But I think they're gonna tell him, hey, when you're running the football, get down, right? Don't take these unnecessary hits, especially with your ribs if he does play. And I think they would change some of those running packages because he's ran the ball 66 times this year. So a big portion of their running game. You look at Robinson, right? He's the lead rusher as far as carries, but next in line is Jayden Daniels. So big part of their game is running the ball, the RPOs. So you kind of wonder, like, is this a game where they're like, hey, what he does well is run the ball. It sets up everything else. If he's not 100%, are we going to sit him out a week and let him get healthy at that point? Or are we going to limit him and make him pass the ball more? So it comes down to how confident they feel in his ability to do well, because I think this is a big game, and I think he gives them the best chance to win. But if he's not 100%, they're going to have to, say, hey, is this what's best for the team at this point? Is he going to give us the best chance to win if he's not at full capacity?
Yeah, no question. And then you also have the aspect of, the throwing charts don't tell the whole story, but when you look at Jayden Daniels' throwing charts, you see that a lot of stuff is going to the right side of the field, right side of the hash. Not everything, but certainly a large percentage of his throws. And so the Bears, they play this base, cover 2, they're in cover 3, and they, certainly put, quarterbacks in a tough spot every week. It seems like teams are having trouble figuring out where the windows are on this defense. And then you have Jalen Johnson, is one of the top corners in the league. You know, you look at what Brian Thomas did here Sunday morning yesterday, against the New England Patriots. And we didn't see Brian Thomas doing that, against the Bears. And it just seems like whoever the Bears seem to go against, their secondary seems to be up for the challenge. So, when you look at the half field reads, not every play. So I'm not, if Washington fans find this show, don't come after me. I think that Jayden is capable of throwing to both sides of the field. But at the same time, if you were Matt Eberflus, would you implement Jalen Johnson to the side of the field that Jayden Daniels certainly seems to be comfortable throwing to?
Would 100%. I think he's one of the best corners in the league right now, if not the best. The way he's playing right now, when they throw at him, he makes plays, and they don't like to throw him at a bunch. So if I'm Matt Eberflus, I'm putting him on that right side. Defense is left, because that's where majority of their passes want to go. So I want my best where he's going, and he's the best for a reason. I think he'll make him pay. I'm really hoping Jayden Daniels does play in this game, because I want to see their best versus our best. I really do, especially with him and Caleb Williams being 1 and 2. Obviously, it's going to be a fun storyline to see the top two quarterbacks going against each other. Both have had great success. I think Jayden Daniels started off a little hotter than Caleb, but the way Caleb's playing now, it's like, man, people are like, yeah, he's coming. And I just am really excited just to see them both go toe-to-toe and see who can get the best of them. Obviously it's a team game and all that, but I think the way Caleb is becoming comfortable in the system, Jayden Daniels, Cliff Kingsbury have done a great job working together and suiting his strengths. And I think early on, that's why we saw Jayden Daniels doing better than Caleb on paper, because Cliff Kingsbury was scripting for what he does well, as opposed to like, oh, this is what I like to do. And I think that's the mark of a good coach. The one great thing is Shane Waldron has pivoted and said, listen, I have to step back. I got to figure out how I can make things work. And it started with getting the run game going with Swift, especially not only the lateral runs, but in between the tackles, because I think that softens up opposing defenses. So it's been a fun thing to watch, and now the game's flexed, and I think everybody's going to be tuning in and seeing, okay, what quarterback is better at this point? Regardless of what happens in this game, it doesn't make or break either quarterback's career. I think both of them, hats off to them, they're both playing well with all the pressure and the hype surrounding both of them. So hopefully it'll go down to the wire. Both quarterbacks play well, but our quarterback plays a little bit better in that situation and get the win.
Nicholas Moriano, our intrepid beat reporter here at CHGO Bears, is in the chat, and he says, so Jalen will predominantly play the field while Tyreek will play the boundary. Wonder if Flus will switch it up given how heavy Daniels throws to his right. 100%. That's, we've never really seen, somebody's going to have to go back and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think we've ever really seen Flus implement this with Jalen Johnson and make it Jalen Island, yet. But I think this would be the game to call for it if you're, following the analytics, and especially if his running ability is taken back a little bit or completely taken out with, if he's trying to play through injury. Adam Rank will be joining us here shortly, and we'll get into more of the question that Corey posed of, would you want Jayden Daniels to play? Like if you had the choice, because I think it's an interesting one from a fan perspective. And also I have some questions in that regard from a player perspective when you're looking at different options, and you're going into a game thinking you're going to play one guy, and then all of a sudden, a backup might come in. So I think there's a bigger picture conversation to be had with that. And Adam Rank from NFL Network, who joins us every Monday, will be joining us here shortly. So I'm excited to have him on. I haven't talked to you guys in a few weeks. Shout out to Joey Christopoulos for holding it down here the last couple of weeks. He does a great job with you and not in covering college football here for ALLCITY and everything else that we're doing here. And he did a great job here for After Dark. Make sure you're hitting the like button while you're hanging out, and make sure you're hitting up our guys over at CHSN. CHSN has just jumped on board here with us, and we appreciate those guys. They're working hard to get you guys all the coverage they can possibly get with the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox games. We are sponsored by Chicago Sports Network. CHSN will broadcast more than 300 live games per year across the Blackhawks, Bulls, and White Sox, and will feature a full lineup of original Chicago-focused sports content. They're also Chicago-based, Chicago-built, and Chicago to the core, and they're bringing it to every corner of Chicago across our 77 neighborhoods and beyond. So at CHSN, Chicago comes first. Visit chsn.com for more info on how to watch the Bulls, Hawks, and White Sox games all season long. And also, quickly, got to give some love our guys over at ComEd, as always, here, helping us keep the lights on here at CHGO Bears After Dark. It's getting easier for businesses to switch to electric vehicles. That's something we can all get behind for the health of the planet and the well-being of all of us who share it. The electric grid is evolving to meet your cleaner energy needs as we all move with confidence towards an electric tomorrow. Whether you have one delivery van or a whole fleet of shipping trucks, ComEd can help guide you to make the changes that make sense. So business owners should go to comed.com/clean to learn more about the resources, fleet rebates, and infrastructure incentives available to help businesses go electric. If you own a business, don't wait. Start making your plan today to switch to electric vehicles. Good for business, good for the planet, good for all of us. Go to comed.com/clean. Go now and see how going electric connects us to a better way of doing business and a better future for generations to come. Once again, go to comed.com/clean. So joining us now, as always, here on CHGO Bears After Dark is the one and only, the king of Meatball Island, our guy, Adam Rank from NFL Network. We appreciate you joining us once again. I'm back from London. I have survived. I have missed you guys dearly. I know we talked last
I don't think that's true. I saw the videos. I saw the post. Like, he didn't miss us at all. He was like, oh, yeah. Like, on the Monday night of 2 weeks ago, you were in Paris.
Mm-hmm.
Last Monday, you were back in London. Like, I don't think you missed us at all. And it's fine. You could be, you just don't lie to us. That's the thing. Like, you can say what you want. Just don't lie to us.
Well, I wish you were there. Like, I wasn't upset about where I was. No. I just wish you were there to enjoy the day, the nights with us, because there were some late nights.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure there were, and it looked like a tremendous time. And you know, it's funny too, because just looking back at all the support, like watching the game this week and seeing, like, and I know it's at Wembley, so it's a little bit different, but the Bears game seemed like a festival. You know, that it seemed like the when we were young festival in Las Vegas or something like that, where it was a happening. The Wembley game is just like, it's the Jags in London. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Like, no, the Bears being there felt like an event, especially with the crowd participation and everything like that. It was wonderful to see.
Yeah, well, Corey will tell you, one late night I was sending him a Facebook video where I think I was like cursing at him about how I could beat Corey on a par 3 course, because Corey told us about this par 3 course in Arizona where there's 18 par 3s. And I said, like, this would take all the power out of Corey's game, and that's the course I can beat him on. But
there's Hartwell.
Irons is the best part of my game, bro. Come on.
All right. Yeah, we're going to find out here in 2 weeks. If you join us in Arizona, make sure you hit up True Fan Travel. You can join us for our little golf outing here coming up here in like 13 days or so. So excited for that. So Adam, I want to focus back in on here this heavyweight bout, number 1 versus number 2 in the draft, Caleb Williams versus potentially Jayden Daniels. I know now all of a sudden this rib injury comes about from the Panthers game, which throws a little wrench in this whole idea the NFL had to flex the game to 325 on the national stage. And so I'm kind of caught, Adam, and I want to get your thoughts on this, and then I'll move it over to you, Corey, because it's like, as a fan, like, we just want to see the Bears win, right? Yeah. And so I'm not rooting. I'm not hoping Jayden doesn't play, because that feels almost like a jinx. But then also to say, like, well, I do. Corey said, I hope he does play because I want to beat him at full strength. I totally get that mentality. But at the same time, if they're easier to beat without him, at the end of the day, I just want wins, because we all know what the second half is for the Chicago Bears on their schedule. So where do you stand here on this? Like, how do you phrase this as a fan? Do you want Jayden Daniels, or like how are you looking at this?
Regardless of who's playing quarterback for the Commanders, it's a former number 2 overall selection at quarterback. That's fine. I don't care who it is. Let it be whom it is. Like, that's fine. Like, Marcus Mariota, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to go out there and get wins. And it's one of those things that also, because everybody on the internet and the Commander fans especially have made this such a Caleb Williams versus Jayden Daniels thing that you can't even enjoy what Jayden Daniels is doing. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're already like, it's too much. It's like, why? Like, I just don't know why certain fan bases just can't be happy with what they have. Like, oh, okay, great. Yeah, Jayden Daniels worked out great for you. I hope you enjoy that. Because last year we had to wear that a little bit with everybody who from Houston was like, oh, you guys passed on CJ Stroud. And you're like, I mean, I guess we're probably going to end up with Caleb Williams, so it's going to work out pretty well. And you look at it this season, I think we're okay. I still think we ended up with the better quarterback. So especially with the way he played at Lambeau yesterday. So for me, there is a part of me that is like, I just want to win. I want to get to 5-2 by any means necessary. That's all I care about. But at the same time, and honestly, the excuses are already going to be baked in anyways. If the Bears do beat Jayden Daniels, who's playing, like, wow, he's coming off an injury. He wasn't 100. Like, oh God, like, oh, whatever. Like, say what you want to say, do what you want to do. Again, like, it would be fun to put Jayden Daniels away, but it also, if the Bears win this game, I think is the most important thing.
Well, and it's a good point. You know, if they beat him, the baked-in excuse, well, he's playing injured. And if he doesn't play, well, you beat a team with backups. Then you got
well, and and this is the thing too, is if Jayden Daniels doesn't play in this game, and he's considered week to week, and we've seen this with other quarterbacks, wasn't this part of the concern about drafting Jayden Daniels? Was because of his body type, he was not going to be able to withstand a 17-game NFL schedule. So then you're like, well, we're already seeing this. Like, yeah,
right. And not just body type, but his style of play. He takes off and runs a lot. And that was the issue with Justin Fields as well. Like, great player, wants to get out and run, but that opens yourself up to more, potential for injury. And I also look at it, it's kind of this weird thing where it's like, you're like getting ready for the fastball. You step in the box and you know the fastball is coming with Jayden Daniels, and you're ready to hit it as a Bears defense. You're ready for that fastball. You've been ready for it all year. And now all of a sudden you got this, now it's a changeup coming with Marcus Mariota. And the way they played against Panthers, and I understand it's Panthers, but like the fall off wasn't like they still played good football, even though Jayden came out. So now you're like, oh, I'm going to blast this changeup, but it's actually a good changeup with Marcus Mariota. And that's where I wanted to throw it to Corey real quick.
Hold on, before we get to Corey, I wanted to touch on that real quick. If Tyson Bagent had come in and played the way that Marcus Mariota played, the narrative would have been, oh, like, did the Bears even need a quarterback? I have not heard one person say, not a single soul come out and say, like, hey, maybe the Washington offense is quarterback proof. Like, nope. They're just tripling down on Jayden Daniels. Nobody has even raised that point.
Well, and you look at the Bears the Bears could have picked Dan Quinn over Matt Eberflus, and that's a head-to-head matchup. And then also Cliff Kingsbury here and Shane Waldron, and the Bears had their choice with Cliff Kingsbury. So you're seeing that. So, to the point of the changeup, Corey, as a player, when you're going into a game and you for weeks, you've got this game circled, and now all of a sudden it's a different quarterback than you were anticipating. Was there ever a moment in your career where somebody kind of threw you the okie doke where you're like, oh, now we got this team. This was a game we circled and now they're shorthanded. And now all of a sudden, like the only one I can really think of was did you play in the game where Colin Kaepernick came in against Alex Smith? Now this is a little different of a circumstance.
Breaks off us.
Yeah. I'm not going to say Mariota is Colin Kaepernick, but yeah, like, to me, is there a little bit of a susceptibility for the Bears defense to get lulled to sleep a little bit if it's not Jayden Daniels?
No, I don't think so, because I think Marcus Mariota, right, he's been inconsistent at times with his career, but he's had some really good games. He's had some pretty decent years, and the way he played in that game when he came in, he looked pretty dang good. And you look at him, he has nothing to lose at this point. Nobody thinks he
Right.
can be a starter. Nobody thinks he can play. And he is athletic. So when people are saying, oh, Jayden Daniels, obviously he's quicker than, but Marcus Mariota can still run as well. So they can still run the same scheme, same system, the RPOs. He could still beat defensive ends to the edge. He could beat outside linebackers to the edge. So I think if he's playing, it's still going to be a tough matchup because Cliff Kingsbury's been doing a great job with Jayden Daniels of putting him in positions to succeed. I think he'd do the same with Marcus Mariota if he's out there. So I think it comes down to coaching, and they've done a great job of getting this offense going, doing things that Jayden Daniels has been comfortable with. So if they do go with Marcus Mariota, I still think it's going to be a tough game defensively because when you look at their scheme, there's a lot you have to worry about. You really have to be, on your game. You have to know exactly who you have on this, who has the quarterback, who has the dive. You have to stay at home for when the reads come around. So there's a lot of moving parts of this offense that keep you honest. And I think a lot of times, like teams that aren't very disciplined, they really get after them. So hopefully the Bears this week, after a bye week, stay focused, right? Don't get too high on what they did against Jacksonville and London. Come ready to go in a flex game that's a big game against Washington. So hopefully they're ready to go. And defensively, I really do hope Jayden Daniels is in there because I know, playing against former other rookies, you get up for those games because you want to say, hey, welcome to the league, rookie. You want to show them that, hey, you're playing against this Bears defense and we're for real. So I'm hoping he does play. But either way, I think they're going to be ready to go because I think they know what they're capable of, and especially defensively. Just continue doing what you're doing. Stay disciplined. Stay at home. Assignment sound, something that in the first couple of weeks, with Houston and company, they struggle with a little bit, but lately they've been playing lights out defensively, and now offense we're starting to get things figured out. So it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, and I get the sentiment. Some Bears fans like, hey, at the end of the day, like I started out with, like I just want to see the Bears win. Obviously, if you let me pick, and the Bears are going to win no matter what, I want to beat Jayden Daniels, even with the baked-in excuse that he's playing injured. I don't care. Like that, it is what everybody.
If you're out there, you're healthy enough to play.
Exactly right. But also at the same time, like I'm not rooting for Jayden Daniels to not play in this game. But if he doesn't play, and it's part of the reason why the Bears have an easier path to success. Like I see Christian Solid here in the chat, who one day I think I might throw in Lake Michigan, but I love him for tuning in for every show. Says, hey, we made the playoffs by beating 5-year-olds. Yay, us. And I get that. Like maybe you
don't take that.
Right. Well, the 4 or 5, that's what I was going to say. The 4 or 5 years, the Bears have been really good in my lifetime, or at least over the last 20, 25 years. It has kind of been like that, where the schedule laid out perfectly. Not to say those teams weren't also talented, but a lot of things fell into place. And it will be nice to get to a point where the Bears win. I mean, look at the Chiefs, obviously the most extreme example, but they're 6-0 and they're not even playing good football. Like you watching the game yesterday, they're up 14-12, and you felt like the Niners were outplaying them, and yet they were still winning. And so at the end of the day, for me, I just want to see the Bears win as many games as they can before the gauntlet, because then Caleb Williams is playing in meaningful games at the end of November and in December. And then whether they succeed or don't, whether they make the playoffs or not, he's getting real action games that mean something. This game certainly means something, but they're going to mean a hell of a lot more in December. So I'm going to take my wins any way I possibly can get them at this point. But of course, all things being equal, I want to beat teams at full strength.
Well, I think
go ahead, Corey.
Yeah, the one thing I was going to say, I just hate sometimes when people are like, well, they're playing these cupcake teams. The first couple weeks, literally, it was up for grabs. Any game, any team you thought was going to win didn't win. There's all these upsets. Right. Any given Sunday, anybody can come out and beat you. It's not like college football where you're playing an FBS 1AA team against Alabama. It's not like that. Like these guys have dudes at every step of the, from the D-line to the linebackers. They got people on offense that can beat you. So on any given Sunday, anybody can beat anybody. So yes, on paper, the Bears should beat, Jacksonville, but they went out there and they executed. And I think that's the mark of a good team, is going out there and executing your game plan and playing well. And I think the mark of even better team is like Kansas City. They're not playing well, and they're still winning football games. So imagine when they hit on all cylinders, they're really going to be rocking. So
Washington hasn't beaten anybody right now. They're not apologizing for that.
Nobody cares about that. That's just accepted. Like, yeah, that's good for them. They're beating like that. And we talked about this last week, and I think you and I, when you came on last week as well, it's like, it's not like these games have been close.
Right.
It's not like the Bears are scrapping to win. Like if the Bears had won a game 15-13, and we had Cairo kicking 5 field goals.
Right.
And remember last year, the Vikings game that we won, where that was a hard sell to be like, hey, and it was the first time that Justin Fields had ever really rallied us for a victory. So we were really selling it like, hey, you know what? It wasn't pretty, wasn't whatever, but he finally got the job done against a decent enough team or whatever. And even in your heart of hearts, you're kind of like, this sort of sucked. There was nothing about those last 2 games. Even the Rams game is like, yeah, they went out and they won these games, and they played really well, and they did what they had to do. Like even the Rams, and I know they're playing the Raiders, but like the Rams have looked like they're better than people give them credit for. I still think that was a pretty decent win. Whether it was Caleb, I know he didn't throw for 300 yards, so nobody accepts that. But you know what? They went out there and they won the way that they needed to win. So I've been impressed by the way they're playing the way you're supposed to play against these teams. And let's see what happens. Like, even if they beat Washington, there will still be people who be like, their defense still isn't great. I think last week they did have an interception. Coming into last week's game against Carolina, they had just 1 interception on the season. Were able to fool Andy Dalton a little bit, but still not considered a great team. But I think that the Bears have to go out there and just win who's in front of them. There's nothing else they can do.
Yeah, no question. You're 100% right. They're not just beating who they should, but they're beating them the way you're supposed to beat them if you call yourself a good team. And when you look at the one good team they've played on their schedule, Houston, they couldn't have played worse in that game. And yet, especially offensively, obviously, yet they still had the ball with a chance to win the game on the final possession,
down 6,
in prime time on the road. So, like, if you're trying to do this transitive property of how they're going to stack up against the gauntlet, well, then look at how they played in week 2. And I think anybody can acknowledge they're a much different team than they were in week 2 than they are now. So, like, just trying to use that fan math of what that equals when they play the Packers and the Niners and the Lions and everybody else, you have to at least assume a little bit that they're going to be ready for these games to make them competitive.
And when you're talking about the gauntlet too, I mean, this week should be a reminder to anybody. Like, we don't know what these teams are going to look like weeks from now. I mean, the NFL flexed the game into the, what do they call, the 1 o'clock window or 4 o'clock window, because they thought they were going to get Jayden Daniels against Caleb Williams. Jayden Daniels might not even play. Again, the NFL season changes so much between now and a month from now. We don't know how the Bears are going to be. We don't know how these other teams are going to be. So I really don't want to get into the whole notion of talking so much about, like, hey, when they play the 49ers in week whatever, like, the only thing I'm worried about is getting my flight to San Jose. Like, I don't know. It's Brock, like, the 49ers, I mean, Brandon Ayuk is out for the season. Deebo Samuel is battling pneumonia. And then even George Kittle's battling an injury now. Pearsall just came. Like, we don't even know. Is Christian McCaffrey ever going to return? Like, there's so many things that happen between now and then. But again, the main focus right now should just be beating the Commanders.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, to me, like, Corey, how much pressure are you putting? If they go 3-0, they're 7-2 before their final 8 games. If they go 2-3, they're 6-3. So, like, how much emphasis are you putting on, like, what's the number they have to hit? Like, if they only win one of these games, are they toast because of the second half of the season? Because, like, I am looking at this 3-game.
This isn't the Premier League.
They've got to win 2 or 3 here, Adam. They have to. They already gave one up to the Colts.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it would be nice to win all 3, but obviously, right? I look at it like you take it one game at a time. If you can go 1-0 each week, just take it one game at a time. Don't look ahead. Don't look to the next opponent. Don't look 2 from now. Don't look 3 from now. Just focus on the task at hand, one game at a time. And I think if they can do that, that's what they've been doing the past couple of weeks, taking it one game at a time. Hey, we had a better performance, against the Rams. We did some things here, but we still got to improve. I think the key is just them staying hungry, right? Not getting complacent. Yes, Caleb played a good game. The offense is coming along. The defense has been playing really good football, but not getting complacent, right? Still wanting more, still wanting to be the best. And I think that's the driving factor in a lot of these teams that consistently win every year, is they never get complacent. So I think if the Bears want to take the next step and be a team every year that's winning ball clubs, that's making playoff runs, that's making Super Bowl runs, they can't be complacent regardless of how well they're playing. So I look at it this week, right? You handle business, you go 1-0. Then you flush it, right, onto the next game. We go 1-0 at that time. Take it 1 week at a time. And I think if they could have that mentality, it'll have them focused on the task at hand as opposed to looking at what this team is doing or when we have that team. So if they could just focus and take it 1 week at a time.
Corey Wootton, Adam Rank, Greg Braggs Jr. here on CHGO Bears After Dark. Make sure you're hitting that like button while you hang out. We appreciate every single one of you joining us each and every Monday night, hanging out, talking Bears as we're finally through the bye week, looking ahead to Bears and Commanders. And we appreciate everybody tuning in. And also, hey, make sure you hit up our shirt store. Some cool designs like our Claws Up shirt and franchise collection. If you go to store.allcitynetwork.com, you can see all the great designs we have there at your disposal. Adam, I want to set you up with this, and then we'll kick it around. Bye week is an opportunity to sit on your couch and watch the rest of the NFL and try to relax and you don't have to stress about your own team, but you see, what the rest of the division looks like, what the rest of the NFL looks like. And I got to tell you, just over these first 6 weeks of this season, Aiden Hutchinson or not, the Detroit Lions, and I know Don Burr will be celebrating, and I've said this a few times on our shows here in the last couple of weeks, but they have a Super Bowl look to them. They really do. And over the last 4 weeks of the season, I think Nick Moriano put it out there that over the last 4 games, Jared Goff has, and the Lions offense has more touchdowns than Jared Goff has incompletions. 18 touchdowns for the offense, only 16 incompletions. So you're talking about an efficiency that's just at another level. Jameson Williams looks like an unguardable wide receiver that they've unleashed now that he's kind of gotten out of his own way here these last couple of years. And Jahmyr Gibbs, and they just have so many weapons. And yesterday they play the Vikings on the road, big divisional matchup, and they hand the Vikings their first loss of the season. How impressed have you been by Detroit? I know I know it's like pulling teeth to get you to compliment somebody in our division. And I saw your picks when it was a Vikings versus Lions. You picked the Bears to win, so I respect it. But I'm looking at the Lions. I hope the Bears can get to the mountaintop one day, but I see a Lions team that could very well win the Super Bowl this year. Am I crazy for saying that?
No, you're not. You're not crazy. I think there's a lot of good things. We talked about this when Cynthia Freeland was on with me on the Sick podcast on our weekend edition. Aiden Hutchinson is a great player, and you don't want to lose great players like that. But the Lions have done a nice job of kind of coming around and rebuilding that team and rebuilding that image of them, that they go out there and they win big games, and falling behind by 10 points and still being able to rally to win that game, I thought was very impressive, especially on the road. Like, this is the one where I've been kind of not hesitant. I've been like, the Lions are good. I've been on the Lions as a playoff team for the last couple of years. It wasn't like a 1 year aberration for me. So it wasn't like I was good with them. I'm like, they're a good team. I just still question if they could get over the top. And when you rally from a double-digit deficit against a divisional opponent who's playing at the top of their game. And I know, like, people were asking this before the game. They're like, do you think that the Vikings are frauds? You're like, the Vikings have defeated the Texans. They defeated the 49ers, even the Jets before they started their slide. Like, they handled them too. Like, they've beaten some good teams. I think everybody in this division is good. But I saw something out of the Lions that looks like a championship caliber team. I'll still question Jared Goff, even though he's been very efficient. He's doing wonderful things. And the good news is, I'm trying to think, where's the Super Bowl this year? It's in New Orleans. So there's probably only going to be 2 games that Jared Goff is going to have to play outdoors. And that's outdoors against the Bears in the regular season. That's outdoor against the Bears in the NFC Championship game. And can he win either one of those games? I don't know that he can. So I think that this is a good team. If the Lions can avoid the Bears, then I think that they definitely can get to the Super Bowl.
There you go.
Yeah. We're also a good matchup for them. Like, we match up well against them. Like, I don't think that, like, Green Bay has their mastery over us, but, like, we've done a really nice job, especially during the Dan Campbell era, against the Lions. And I'm curious to see if that still continues to play out.
And in general against Jared Goff, right? Even back to his Rams days, right? And somebody that we've traditionally played well at, that plays for the Rams now is Matthew Stafford. So I think there's certain matchups against certain quarterbacks that we usually play well against. And I think the Bears usually get up for Jared Goff and they give him fits, right? Because you pressure the quarterback, you make any quarterback uncomfortable. I think that's the key, right? You could have Tom Brady, you could have Aaron Rodgers. When they're pressured, they're going to turn the ball over. So I think the Bears' key when they're playing a guy like Jared Goff is get him uncomfortable. And obviously, you got to stop the run game with Gibbs and company. They're really getting things going. But when you look at Detroit as a whole, it doesn't matter if they're up, they're down. They're just so consistent, right? They don't make many mistakes. They're a well-coached ball club. And I think when it comes down to the wire, they're realizing, like, how to win games, like what we've seen from Patrick Mahomes and company. And for Detroit, for the longest, they could not win games. And that's what they're doing now. They're finding ways when they're not playing their best to win games. And I think that's the mark of a great team. And Dan Campbell has them playing great football, even without Aiden Hutchinson. It's like next man up mentality. Obviously, it's a tough hole to fill, but I think they're doing a great job of getting a win. And in this league, that's all that matters. Somebody say, oh, they didn't play well, they didn't do this. At the end of the day, right? It's wins and losses, and that's where you get rewarded. That's where you get your seeding based on the playoffs. That's how you make the playoffs. So they're finding a way to get that done.
And it was wild too, because I know you were talking about J-Mo. He didn't do anything yesterday. Sam Laporta does nothing. Yeah. If I'm remembering this correctly, I'm basing this off fantasy production. J-Mo actually, he's a good blocker. Like he actually gets busy. Like that's one of his most impressive things. So I'm sorry, that's rude of me to say that he did nothing. He played very well. But they also, like, one of the things about the Vikings coming into this game, they'd allow 1 rushing touchdown on the entirety of the season. And Jahmyr Gibbs gets a pair of touchdowns, not catching the football, but running it. And you're like, damn, like if this guy gets going as a running threat out of the backfield, not that he's replacing David Montgomery, but if he has that extra part to his game, like that's even like, God, I don't like seeing that. Like they're good, and they're not even using these. They're not they're not like statistically using Laporta and J-Mo, but they're still out there contributing. So that's a good team. I'll give them credit.
No question about it. Ben Johnson, their offensive coordinator's got that offense humming, and certainly.
If you're Ben Johnson, what do you do when the Jets come calling during the offseason or one of these teams? Like I know that there's people want to be head coaches, and I get that. But like when I think about like Buddy Ryan, like, hey, Buddy Ryan, would your life have been better if you'd stayed the defensive coordinator of the Bears, or if you'd gone on to coach the Philadelphia Eagles where you won nothing? Like, I know that they don't think of it that way, and everybody wants to be a head coach, but it's like, oh, dude, Ben Johnson, like you got a sick gig, and I would wait. I don't know. I don't. I saw like Aaron Nagler was like, I hope this guy gets hired. I'm like, God, because you're afraid of him. I'm not afraid of him, but I think that he does such a great job. It's like, dude, you've got. I think Dave Canales is somebody right now who's like, yeah, I had a pretty good gig down there in Tampa Bay, and this is not a lot of fun in Carolina.
Nope, you gotta figure it out. I think the Bucks are up 10-0. Speaking of his good spot down in Tampa.
Spoiler alert! I had it paused.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Was it Chris Godwin? And now, okay, too late now. I'm gonna go look
Mike
at my
Evans. It was Mike with the.
Damn it! That's not who I need.
I'm sorry. I mean, all right.
Real quick to get on the offensive coordinator? It seems like the league is becoming. How can we get that next Sean McVay? How can we get that Andy Reid, right? That offensive mastermind to build and mold our quarterback and our offense to be this powerhouse, right? That everyone wants what Patrick Mahomes had. Everyone wants what Tom Brady and the Patriots had. They're trying to build that. So I think that's what the trend is becoming. A lot of times they're like, hey, who's this young, brilliant offensive mind? And let's make him a head coach. Let's have him do the play calling and mold this offense and, get a quarterback that can, do what Jared Goff did, because a lot of people were questioning Jared Goff when he came to Detroit. Oh, this guy can't play. Are you kidding me? We gave up Matthew Stafford for this guy. Are you kidding me?
Right.
And now people are like, oh, I'd rather have Jared Goff on the Detroit Lions than Matthew Stafford. I personally would right now. I'm not talking about 5-7 years ago, but right now the way Jared Goff is playing in that system with this team as a whole, they're really buying into what he's doing, and I think it's perfect for what they have. Matthew Stafford used to air the ball out almost 50 times a game.
Right.
In Detroit. That was just a different offense. Right now they're like, hey, we're going to ground and pound. We're going to throw the ball. I'm going to be efficient. And he's like every game he's at like, almost 80% completion percentage. It's unbelievable to watch. So Jared Goff, in my opinion, I think is playing better football right now than Matthew Stafford.
But I believe that if Matthew Stafford was in Detroit, he'd be doing the same things. Braggs is kidding me for not giving Detroit credit. I've been giving Matthew Stafford credit for years. I think he's so vastly underrated. I hope at some point I'm going to explain to my child, I'm like, you know what? Nobody thought this in the moment, but looking back on it, I think that Stafford was better than Rodgers.
Yeah,
And
it was
I'll die on that
in his prime.
Yeah, I'll die on that hill.
Ooh, that's really.
I think what we're seeing out of Aaron Rodgers right now just kind of shows like everything we need to know about him. Like, I think a lot of it was hidden, and you're like, oh, this guy was kind of like not a great teammate and kind of did things as I don't want to spend a lot of time promoting Matthew Stafford, but I think that he's been one of the most underrated players in the NFL of his era.
Well, one of the teams that made it hard on Matthew Stafford, that made his reputation hurt a little bit, was the Chicago Bears, and Peanut Tillman here saying, give a like, hit that like button while you're hanging out. Well, and when we're talking about good play callers and talking about quarterbacks, you look over at Green Bay, and then they find a way to beat the Houston Texans. And, Adam, I'll start with you and we'll kick it around the horn here, but I just find Jordan Love to be this conundrum. I look at him as a very good quarterback. I think he's got the look of a guy that throws with confidence into any window. He has a short memory, so he's willing to make a mistake and come right back at you. But there's just so many people here around the, Bears Twitter sphere that think he's not very good, and that he takes way too many risks, and he throws off his back foot too much. And, he sails balls that turn into interceptions. He's leading the NFL in interceptions now. So, like, where do you stand on who Jordan Love is as a quarterback? Because he finished the season with his hair on fire at the end of last year. They almost make the Super Bowl. But, like, there's just the sample size isn't very big to have any, It's not like the book is completely out on him yet.
No.
We still don't really know who he is as a quarterback.
But he's a fifth-year quarterback. Like, he's in his fifth year in the NFL, and it's not like he hasn't been doing what has he been working on when he wasn't a starter, if it wasn't like your footwork and doing everything like that? I think he's very good. And I think that he gets into situations that, you look back at last year, the playoffs was like a perfect encapsulation of what you get out of him. And it's the same thing that you got out of Brett Favre, where it was like, you know what? You go up against a team, you're slightly over, like you have the overplay over a team in the playoffs. That quarterback's going to look good. And he's going to go out there and put up numbers, and it's going to be fantastic. And he goes out there and beats the Cowboys, and you're like, this is the best quarterback that we've ever seen. Is he better than Rodgers and Favre? Maybe. And then the following week, he goes into San Francisco, and you take too many chances. At some point, it's kind of like gambling in Las Vegas. The house always wins. And the way he plays football, he gives the house an advantage. And it's eventually going to catch up to you. Now, sometimes you play that perfect hand, you beat the house, like Aaron Rodgers did once, Brett Favre did once. But over time, like, you put yourself in a position to lose those games. There's a reason why we've seen them defeat themselves so many times. So I think he's very good, and they'll be competitive, and the coaching staff makes them competitive. And it's the defense's play. The thing that's most impressive to me is their defense, because they really frustrated the Texans. Well, I think that Jordan Love is good. Like he's somewhere. He's not quite Brett Favre, and he's not quite Jameis Winston, but he's like somewhere in that middle of like recklessness. Because like, remember the season that Jameis had where he threw for $5,000, and then he had 30 picks and 30 interceptions, and it's remarkable that he's missed 2 games and still leads the league in interceptions. Like, I don't know. I don't want you to be. Well, actually, I don't care what I do want you to be this person. He's got to, but I think that he's a good player who puts his team in harm's way too much.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think it's hit or miss with him. It just depends on. Has a lot of talent, but in this league, it's all about taking care of the football. The teams that do well are the teams that take care of the football. You look at the quarterbacks that are playing really well right now. Jared Goff comes to mind just because he's so efficient, and that's the key. He's not turning the football over. So when it comes down to it, that's what you have to do as a quarterback. Yes, you have to make big plays. You have to make, big time passes, touchdowns, the whole bit. But I think if you can be efficient and limit your turnovers, you've seen it with quarterbacks throughout the league, guys that weren't very talented that won Super Bowls, like Trent Dilfer. When you talk about the greatest quarterbacks out there, I don't think anyone's saying Trent Dilfer was one of the greatest quarterbacks, right? But he was very efficient. He didn't turn the ball over. He had a great defense and run game, and that's what they relied on. So, obviously it pays to have a stud at quarterback that can limit your turnovers and still make plays. So, that's what I'm hoping for with Caleb, is just his progress, because he can make every throw. We see the arm talent there. I think as he continues to just be more efficient, and limiting his turnovers, which he has, the past 4 weeks, I think we're going to constantly just see him improving and getting more comfortable, because half the battle in this league is in between your ears, is your confidence. And the first couple of weeks, he was not confident at all. I think we can all agree, just from his body language, just seeing him, seeing reads, he was kind of hesitant on throws. And now we're seeing, as he sees a read, he's snapping and throwing that thing, right? He's flicking that in there, the different arm angles. He's having fun. He's smiling. And, every quarterback out there, I think that's picked in the top picks is usually super talented, right? It's just about that coach getting the best out of him, getting him comfortable, putting him in positions to succeed, right? Cliff Kingsbury, I said earlier, did that from the beginning with Jayden Daniels. Early on it was tough with Waldron and Caleb Williams. What I loved is that he never let that waver his confidence, right? You just, okay, let's take it one game at a time. He kept improving, kept getting better. And what we're seeing against this Jacksonville game was just what we thought we would see from him, right? It was a matter of time, and it takes time. I think everybody just thought that would happen overnight, and that's not realistic in this day and age. And with any rookie quarterback, it's a hard transition to the next level, no matter how talented you are. But I think, we'll continue seeing progress from him, keep seeing him comfortable, and him getting on the same page with the receivers, because they do have all the weapons there. They have a great defense. And if you're starting a franchise, everything is there for Caleb to be successful, right? A great defense. You got the weapons there. And obviously the offensive line, hopefully next year we can build that up a little bit. I think that's the last remaining piece. But everything from a weapons and a defense standpoint is there for him.
Hendricks here in the chat saying Bears come back to visit Washington in 2025 due to the divisional rotation spin every 3 years, and I'm pretty sure they will book Chicago versus Washington week 2 or 3 next year in 2025. And that to me is like the opportunity if Jayden Daniels were to play is like, Adam, do you think this is a chance where, with the way these two quarterbacks have started, and Drake May has looked pretty good here now that he's come out, and it just looks like it's going to be a really good class of quarterbacks, and we'll see what J.J. McCarthy becomes. But specifically with Jayden versus Caleb, do you think that there's an opportunity here where the NFC can get their quarterback rivalry going with the way the AFC has Mahomes versus Josh Allen, or Joe Burrow is also in the mix, and all these different great quarterbacks over there? And I know Herbert is also a guy that's been trying to, push his way into that category. Certainly a lot of talent, but hasn't had the team resume. And so is this an opportunity here for the NFC to kind of have their star power. They start, the same year, 1 versus 2, and have their careers kind of line up with the way, to the most extreme circumstance. Tom Brady and Peyton Manning seem to face off every single year, and they were rivals, yet they weren't in the same division. Is this something that the Bears and the Commanders, who have already faced the last few years, and now you have this huge quarterback, highlight spotlight that will be attached to this as well? And do you think that this could be something that the NFL can really feed into?
Absolutely. You want to take it back a generation earlier. The 90s had Troy Aikman against Brett Favre and Steve Young, and those guys were competing. And again, if I'm giving out, unpopular football takes, I think that Aikman was. I think the reason the Cowboys won so much was because of Aikman. But that's its story for another day. But yeah, then it fed into the next generation of Tom Brady versus Peyton Manning. And then, like you said, Patrick Mahomes begat him and Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. Like, those 3 guys have been going down. The Bengals were in a Super Bowl not too long ago. Like, as much as we love Josh Allen, the Bills haven't quite broken through to reach the Super Bowl yet. So you have that. And even when you look back to the AFC during the Tom Brady and Peyton Manning era, you still had Ben Roethlisberger, who is a part of that. Phillip Rivers, who, for whatever reason, the San Diego Chargers just always destroyed the Colts, which is like, it's always amazing to me when I think back to the Super Bowl and losing to the Colts, which I was extremely confident going into that game. I really would have loved it more if it would have been the Bears versus the Chargers, because I think that we could have gotten, although listen, if we weren't going to be Tony Dungy, I don't know why we would have thought we would have beaten Marty Schottenheimer, but still, I was convinced when the Chargers went up in that game against the Patriots that that's the team that you were going to get. But you had all those quarterback rivalries, and like, that's been one of the great things about the NFL. The history of the NFL is talked about through the quarterback rivalries. Like, even in the 70s, and I'm losing everybody now. Terry Bradshaw was actually a quarterback in the NFL. I know a lot of people don't know this, but he was a quarterback in the NFL, and he was a rival of Roger Staubach, who was in the NFC, and those guys would face off in the Super Bowl. And then you had Ken Stabler in there and Burt Jones and like all these other guys. So it's a cool part of it, and not to try to get too far ahead of it right now and proclaim this draft class is, exceptional or anything like that. But, we saw CJ Stroud last year. Now you see Caleb and Jayden Daniels. You're like, okay, like, the NFL could be set up for quite some time if they continue to play like this.
Well, I mean, in the NFL goes to show you that sometimes nothing is guaranteed and nothing lasts forever, because you thought you had this with Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III, and both players' careers fizzled out much shorter than anyone anticipated. And let's hope that's not the case with either of these guys, because it just makes the NFL more fun to watch. Corey, before we wrap things up, I know we've kind of touched a lot on this, but give us your locker room speech. You're walking back into the room after a bye week off. Everybody kind of went and did their own thing. I know Caleb Williams was at Six Flags and doing his thing and doing puzzles in the middle of the night. Now we're all back to Hallis Hall, getting our workout and looking ahead to the game. Like, what would be your message to the defensive line as a leader of that group, and talking about getting back into the mindset of continuing the momentum that they've built here these last few weeks?
I think the thing is just picking off right where we left off, right? In that Jacksonville game, really being able to pressure the quarterback, playing disciplined football. And it starts this week, right? Whether it's Jayden Daniels or it's Marcus Mariota, they're both mobile guys. We have to keep them in the pocket, right? Rush lanes. Can't let them get outside our pocket at all. We have to be very disciplined in what we're doing. When we're doing games, we have to make sure we get up to their lead shoulder to force them back inside. And especially when they have the RPOs, defensive ends, outside linebackers, right? We have to stay at home and know exactly what we have, because this offense is designed to trick you. It's designed to take advantage of when you're not doing what you're supposed to. That's how they exploit you. So if we can stay disciplined, right, with all the noise with the RPOs, they're all of a sudden going to drop back and pass. And that's where we could pin our ears back and heat them up. So that's a situation that, hey, when we force them, when we stop that run with Robinson and Jayden Daniels or Marcus Mariota, now we can really pin our ears back, right? We can tighten the coverage a little bit, buy ourselves a second. And Montez Sweat, right, his coming home party, he's going to be excited, ready to go. I expect him to have a big game. So, I'm looking at him like, hey, this is the old team that didn't want you, right?
Right.
They said, hey, you can have them, right? So make them pay for letting you go because you're one of the best in the league at what you do. So Andrew Billings been playing like a Pro Bowler, right? The Jervon Dexter, you're one of the leaders in sacks this year. You took the next step. Now let's get it, right? Let's dominate every game. Let's set the line of scrimmage. Let's set the tone for this game, and let's get after this young quarterback and make him say, hey, man, that Bears defense – pretty fucking good.
Love it. That's a good way to finish this. Adam, I know it sounds like you're trying to get your voice back here a little bit. So we're feeling for you. I lost mine last week. So
I did a Willie Walker impersonation on GMFB on Friday that just started me down the road to ruin. Then I was doing pretty good again today. And then we were going off and we were doing NFL Fantasy Live. I even shouted out you in the show because I said I tried to do a Ray Romano impersonation without warming up, and it caught me. And I'm like, oh, no, I screwed myself up again. So I got to be careful.
Oh, well, I appreciate the shout out. You've been getting a lot of shout outs in the chat for your Aaron Rodgers and Troy Aikman takes. Everybody's accusing you of being on drugs with some of these takes you've been trying to slip through the cracks here.
What about Troy Aikman? Like, if you look at the NFC playoffs through the 92 through 96, when those guys were all at the height of their powers, Troy Aikman had the second highest passer rating in the playoffs next to Bart Starr was actually number one. Bart Starr, I think, might have changed. Bart Starr had the highest playoff passer rating, and he played like 4 playoff games because this is before the playoffs started. Troy Aikman would go up against those teams. He would go up against the 49ers and against the Packers. He destroyed them. Like, what about it? Like, when you would watch those games, you would know that Steve Young and Brett Favre would make mistakes that cost their team games that Troy Aikman would never make. And you would watch, like, in the 92 NFC Championship game, Steve Young throws an interception to Ken Norton Jr., like right in the middle of the field. And then even when the 49ers answered it, Aikman went out there and hit Alvin Harper on that hitch that sealed the game. They got it down, then Emmitt Smith scored a touchdown. And of course, Aikman would always just trash the Packers. And the one time I think, and then the Packers, what was he? Oh yeah, it was one of the, and even like the 1 year the Cowboys lost was 94 because of Barry Switzer. And they got behind 21-0 and almost rallied to beat that one. If Barry Switzer, who I forget who his offensive coordinator, because I think Norv Turner had left, like made a bad call at the end of the first half that really cost them. But the Cowboys were well on their way to coming back. So I know these people are kids and they don't understand what they were seeing and they only hear narratives. But as somebody who was alive and watching football in the 90s, you knew that Aikman was better than those other two guys. They did not.
I don't have a problem with that take, but
stop it. It's a fantasy.
Stafford over Rodgers. That's where I'm like, whoa.
That's a tough one.
He did say that was the hill he was going to die on. So he didn't say he was going to survive on that hill, but he's going to.
I grew up a Cowboys fan, so I love Troy Aikman. I think he's
okay. There it is. Right.
But Rodgers, though, I'm like,
didn't know this about you. You grew up a Cowboys.
I grew up a Cowboys fan, even though I grew up right down the street from Giant Stadium. Michael Strahan lived in my town, so we used to play basketball against each other and all this. And he's like, "Man, how are you a Cowboys fan? You grew up right down the street." So my grandfather was a Cowboys fan. Roger Staubach, Tony Dorsett. Wasn't it Dorsett? But then it became Dorsett. Like he changed.
It was when he was at Pittsburgh. He was Tony Dorsett, and then when he went to the Cowboys, he was Tony Dorsett.
Yeah.
And then he was like, and that team,
it's like Joe Theismann turning to Joe Theismann.
Yeah, exactly. Like that kind of thing. And the Cowboys of the 70s, man, they were close. They lost That Steelers Super Bowl. The Cowboys were the first team in Super Bowl history to hold somebody without a touchdown in the Super Bowl. They won 24-3. And they had some great teams, but then the Steelers got them.
Yeah. Yeah, their roster in the 90s was unreal. The Cowboys. I mean, they had
the 49ers had a bunch of
line. Yeah,
they all did. All three of those teams did.
They were all loaded, and they were a lot of fun. I mean, the Bears, it was more of a Bulls era in the 90s, but if you were, football, playoff football, NFC playoffs.
And it was pre-free agency.
Yeah.
It was pre-free agency, so you could pretty much keep your team together up until I think 94 was the first year, because then when Ken Norton Jr. jumped from the Cowboys to the 49ers, that kind of started free agency. Then Dion goes to the 49ers and all that stuff, and it kind of started everything. But yeah.
And then trying to watch Barry Sanders and the Lions try to break through that, somebody, I know people get mad at me when they hear this, but like, I always liked Barry Sanders as a kid. So I always felt for him because it was
there's nothing wrong with liking Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders is the only one, when people try to tell me like who is better than Walter Payton, I will entertain Barry Sanders. And unless you're 80, if you're over the age of 80, I will entertain your Jim Brown argument.
Jim Brown. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you didn't see him play. The NFL he wasn't. Was he part of the NFL? No, because Marion Motley and Leroy Kelly were part of the All-American Football Conference, which was a special league that nobody cares about this football history. I'll just say, anyways, Barry Sanders was very good.
Yeah. Well, I didn't get to really watch Walter Payton play, so when people have this debate, I kind of have to sit out half of it because I didn't watch Walter Payton play the way I did watch Barry Sanders play. But for me, pound for pound, Barry Sanders is the greatest NFL player in my lifetime and, in my opinion, all time.
Was LaDainian Tomlinson not in your lifetime?
He was in my lifetime, but Barry Sanders would eat LT's lunch.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
He would eat his lunch. The man was an alien. It does not. Barry Sanders is on that's how great Barry Sanders is. LT is a great player, and Barry Sanders is on a totally another stratosphere. He's the most unbelievable
stratosphere.
He's the most unbelievable player to ever play the game. He had eyes. Not
rusher.
Just at the back of his head. He had
just a rusher, not like all purpose. Not catching the ball.
He didn't need to be anything.
Who do you think was better, Sean Kemp or Michael Jordan?
That's not even the same. It's not the same. It's not even the same.
I think that people get, I don't know, like his highlight plays were incredible, but see, now I don't want to come off like I'm trashing Barry Sanders.
But think about it. He did it with a pretty garbage team.
Yeah.
Like imagine if he had more of a supporting cast, and he literally retired like in his prime.
Yeah,
like he pulled a Tiki, like, not to say Tiki Barber is Barry Sanders, but similar timing, right? When you're in your prime of your career, you retire, and that's what Barry Sanders.
Air Truth 9 adding Adrian Peterson to the discussion. Great player. So we did a little overtime talking about football players of the past, but we're going to try to save Adam's voice here. He's got a long week of coverage on NFL Network, getting you guys dialed up for your fantasy football lineups. We'll be back on Wednesday on the Sick Podcast, as we always are here, getting ready as we get a few days closer, maybe get some more information on whether or not Jayden Daniels will play. I'm sure they're going to make it a game time decision all the way
for sure,
right up until the day before, play a little gamesmanship. But we appreciate everyone in the chat, as always, hanging out. Please hit that like button while you do. We got a double header of Monday night games to enjoy here, as the Cardinals are about to kick things off or just kick things off here shortly, just a little bit ago. So we appreciate everybody. Once again, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button. Thank you to Corey. Thank you to Adam Rank. We appreciate everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. as always, for our afternoon show with Adam Hogue and Mark Carmen on CHGO Bears. Until then, we'll see you then. Glad to be back. Bear down.
We all silly like the mayor.